Hi and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. This time around, I'm on a rant. I'm going a bit nuts. I've got 10 things that I don't like about movies and movie-related stuff. Some of them are big things, some of them are tiny things, some of them don't even happen anymore, but I'm still cheesed off about them. So I thought this time around I'd give you the 10 things, get it off my chest, start fresh, come in for Science Fiction Saturday next time around with a totally serene mind. And so let's get started with Ichiban. Number 1, 3D in movies. We don't need 3D in movies. 3D started in the 1950s and it was a gimmick for mostly pretty shitty old movies. Things like Bawana Devil and also some good films like It Came From Outer Space and House of Wax. But I'm not convinced that it added enough to these movies and to the other movies it was used on to make it a really worthwhile thing. It's fussy, it's hard to do, you got to mess around a lot to make it work. And I'm not sure that it delivers to the audience. Now, there was a thing called The Flying Stewardesses, I think it is, and I'll put up here whether I'm wrong or not, which was a soft adult film, which is done in 3D, and I can kind of see a little bit of virtue in that for that kind of a film, just like I can for certain kinds of VR material, let's say. But for the most part, I don't particularly like 3D as a gimmick. Later on in the 2010s, when it was used in Marvel movies, it didn't give me enough extra for it to be really something that I was enthusiastic about. I did see a number of the Marvel movies. I think I saw one of the Avengers movies in 3D, but it doesn't have enough. You got to mess around with an extra pair of glasses on a pair of glasses if you wear glasses. It's one of those marketing scams where you go, no, we didn't need this. Why did you give this to us? Yes, you can technologically do it, and fair enough too, but you're not giving us enough extra to make this little gimmick, which obviously is there to get you more money, worthwhile. Number 2, Steelbooks. Steelbook, Blu-rays, DVDs, 4Ks, whatever, are a marketing scam. Let's be honest about that. They rarely have enough extras to make it worthwhile, and you don't actually need the Steelbook for the extras. You can always do a standard in plastic edition. And yes, I know plastics are ruining the planet, but I'm not convinced Steelbooks aren't. And there's a weird fanatical fandom to Steelbooks, where people are really enthusiastic about them and passionate about them, where all they really are, when you cut it down to the basics, is a box that the movie comes in. They're not worthwhile, really. Yes, you can have some pretty artwork. Yes, you can have a box that's partly bulletproof.
And then they pulled out a gun and just went, boom.
But they're a marketing scam, and I've got a few of them, but they were mostly because I couldn't get other editions of it. I'm not holding them any closer to my chest than I am any other movie. So Steelbooks, definitely a scam, definitely not worth our while, one tiny itsy bitsy bit. Particularly Americans are mad about them. There are a number of Steelbook fans out there, and a lot of them have channels, who enthuse madly about these Steelbooks. But for me, I can't really see it. I don't see the attraction. I don't see the need for them. I don't see the value they give to owning a particular movie. Because when it comes down to it, leaving aside collective fandom, it's about the movie. It's about the little electric shadows that you see on your screen that matter. The box it came in is very, very far down the ladder on that one. So that's number 2. Number 3, milking the cash cow. Organizations like Disney milk the cash cow, but then companies like A24 are not totally alien to that possibility as well. They get a franchise, the franchise hits with the first movie, and sometimes they didn't even know it was going to be a franchise until after the first movie came out, which is the case in Star Wars. Forget the retro mythology on Star Wars. It was only ever going to be one movie, and George Lucas didn't know whether it was going to be successful. It didn't have the longer name at the time. They retrofitted that later on to try to make it sound more rizzy, but it's not. And milking the cash cow can be a number of things. It could be the merch, and there's a lot of shoddy merch in landfills these days. It can also be the sequels and things like that. We'll say Disney, because Disney is one of the big offenders. Disney will milk a cash cow until it turns into beef jerky. Then they'll sell the beef jerky and make toys out of the bones. They have sequels and spin-offs and subsidiary things and explanatory movies. They're actually explanatory movies in a number of franchises where the first movie's got a simplistic and silly aspect to it in its world building. And then they'll make a whole movie explaining why that's more complex than it was in the first movie, which it isn't. That kind of stuff annoys the hell out of me. I'm not happy about it. Milking cash cows until they fall apart isn't worthwhile. Yes, it will make you money. But for me as an audience member and as somebody who loves cinema, I want to hear the next story. I don't just want to hear variations on the first story. I want to hear the next story. I want to see something new. I want to see a new world. I want to see new actors doing new things and explaining our world in new ways. And when companies milk that cash cow, as they indeed do, there's nothing there apart from quick nostalgia wank. And that is just not what cinema's about for me. Number 4, the quest for eternal youth. Now, this isn't just in movies. This is also in television and other forms of media, where people do all sorts of incredible things to their face and body to give the illusion of being younger as their careers progress. Now, this doesn't happen everywhere. You have a look at a whole bunch of French actresses and English actors and actresses. They don't get this stuff. But America and increasingly Australia, there's Botox, there's fillers, there's brow lifts, there's chin lifts, there's tit lifts, there's all sorts of things where people are trying to maintain the illusion of youth. And in fact, there are a whole bunch of different filters that can now be put onto movies to hide the fact that these people have done things to their faces and heads which are kind of egregious. Now, it's not just women, so I'm not complaining about it being a women thing. It's probably related to the male gaze, and it's related to how men see women in media, but there are a lot of female actors, and I saw a couple of them interviewed locally on a talk show a couple of days ago, and neither of them could move their face from there up, and from there down it was problematic as well. And they get to the stage where they basically look like guest aliens on Star Trek The Next Generation. It's a weird thing, and like I said, it's not just women. Have a look at Sylvester Stallone's hairline. That is not a natural human hairline. It's not even a natural hairline for an ape, and it's not the hairline that Sylvester Stallone used to have. You look at all sorts of other people. Simon Cowell does it, Nicole Kidman does it, a whole bunch of other actors and actresses who think that they're making themselves look better, but they're taking any character and those micro expressions that we need when people are communicating with us away from what they look like. And that's demented. Injecting botulism into your head is not something that in a sane society we really should be encouraging. So that's number 4, the quest for eternal youth. Number 5, only one of those, and I'll move the camera. Number 5, remakes. Now, not all remakes are bad. The classic movie that I use when people say remakes are bad is The Maltese Falcon. That was the third version of an adaptation of Dashiell Hammett's story to be made. There were 2 more. There was one called The Maltese Falcon in the 1930s. There was also another one made a couple of years later. And then there was the one that hit with John Huston directing, and Bogart, and Mary Astor, and Sidney Greenstreet, and Peter Lorre, and all the other people that made that one lightning in a bottle. So not all remakes are bad, but a lot of them are, particularly in horror. People who get access to certain intellectual properties will go, yes, I can remake that movie and make it really wonderful and make it more relevant to a modern audience, which has happened with Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street and any number of other franchises. But they're as forgettable as the fart you did 2 days ago. They really don't add anything at all. Yeah, they're directly to the bargain bin kind of movies. The other thing too is movies that are claimed to be sequels or prequels or reimaginings, which are basically greatest hits versions of the previous movies in a franchise. A lot of people, and though I haven't said it, a lot of people I trust, say that Alien Romulus is basically a greatest hits version with a couple of twists and a couple of tweaks and a very good director. We didn't ask for that. We don't need it. It's like Avatar sequels. Hands up if you really are hanging out for another Avatar sequel, where, for me at least, I believe that Avatar is a secret fantasy of James Cameron's brought to life, and he's ramming it down the throat of an audience. Avatar is a weird franchise because people go to see the movies, but it's got zero cultural impact after that. They go to see the movies, they forget about them until, James Cameron's doing another one of these, and it's set in a volcano. That kind of stuff just doesn't work. And remakes, again, I want to see new stories. I want to see valuable ways of seeing the world. I want to see new worlds created. I want to see new characters. I don't want to keep seeing the same stuff. Nostalgia is a trap. Nostalgia isn't in our best interests long term. Yes, it rubs our tummy for us, but I get more excited by seeing something new and innovative and wonderful and transgressive and entertaining and with actors doing their best work so far. Things like Poor Things. I want to see more of that kind of stuff. And less of people jumping on a franchise and making sequels. This, of course, relates to the milking the cash cow thing, but it is, for me, slightly different. Number 6. I got to stop gesturing because this bloody camera goes. Saying foreign film when you mean foreign language film. That just cheeses me off because, and also the word foreign, non-English language film maybe, but foreign film is a kind of an alienating thing. It's a term which tends to push audiences away, which it should draw audiences in. Particularly America's guilty of this. They say foreign film when they mean foreign language film. And that's kind of weird because I live in Australia and I'm Australian. Americans make foreign films for an Australian or for a New Zealander or for someone from Singapore or Hong Kong or India or Sri Lanka or Dubai. American films are foreign films. It's a really dumb term, and it's one which doesn't recognize the internationality of cinema and the way that we look at movies from all around the world. Non-English language film? Yeah, absolutely. It's something where I'm going to have to read subtitles and my lips may get tired. Good. I've seen a lot of good foreign language films in the last 12 months. Things like Kalki 2896 AD and a bunch of other films. Well, I'm all for foreign language films. I support them. They show me the world from the viewpoint of people who didn't grow up the way I did. Though, to be honest, there aren't too many people who did. Just that nomenclature, which is a little bit kind of bossy and a little bit cultural supremacist, doesn't really work for me. I think we should find better terms to describe non-English language cinema because there's so much good stuff out there and the way we speak about things influences the way people approach them. I would rather find a good way of describing these films which doesn't push people away from them subconsciously. And so we should find a way to change that, find a way to make that a non-thing. How many times back in the day did you walk into a video shop and there was a sign in one small and lonely section of that video shop that said foreign films? Not foreign films, films from other cultures. Number 7, and this relates to the previous one, English language remakes of perfect foreign language films or perfect other language films. And there's a lot of this going on. It's Hollywood poaching the best ideas from other language films. And yes, they pay money for them. And yes, that filmmaker then gets a payday so they can spend the money making new things. I totally understand the economics of it. But we don't need it. From an audience point of view, there's nothing wrong with the original film. And we don't need to have that movie remade in a language that is friendly to our ear. We need to steer people towards the original and say, this movie hits, this movie is great. You will learn and grow watching this movie and enjoying it in the original way that story was told by the people who came up with the idea, who put their money on the line, who put their careers on the line to make this movie. Don't bother seeing this dumbed down and culture shifted version of this film just because Hollywood got a deal with an actor who wanted to make it. We're better than that. Go and look at the original. I realize there are people who are visually impaired who have trouble with subtitles and people who, because of cognitive difficulties, have trouble reading subtitles. I'm fully aware of that and fully aware of those difficulties for a small number of people in the audience. But for the most part, we do not need to have these movies remade and spoon-fed to us in a familiar flavour. There's so many movies that have been remade in English language versions, and everybody who's seen both of them simply know that the original is the best. It hasn't been watered down for dulled palates. Every time I hear about this, I try to steer people towards the original. The original Ring, for instance. There are a whole bunch of Japanese and Korean horror films have been remade in English versions, and they're just not that good. They're okay, but we have more visceral fear and more visceral horror in the original versions than we ever have in English language versions. There may be one or two exceptions to that, but as a rule, my rule of these things is always go to the original source. Go to the first one. Go to the really cool version that made Hollywood want to remake it and go with that one, enjoy that one, and don't bother with a remake because, very simply, the people are only doing it for their own ego and as a cash cow. They're not doing it out of any passion to tell an original story, and that matters. Now, the last three are kind of minor, and they're sort of movie-related in some ways. One of them's totally petty, and I fully accept and acknowledge and wear that. This one is the one that cheeses me off irrationally, and I don't see it as much these days, but you see it in a number of films, and every time I see it, it makes me think a lot less of the people making that movie. Movies where people have revolvers with silencers on them, they don't work. Silencers do not work on revolvers. Revolvers have got the open chambers at the end of them, so all of the gases shoot out of that. They don't shoot out of the barrel, all of them. The bullet shoots out of the barrel. A silencer on a revolver is about as useless as a chocolate teapot. You can't really do it. And there have been YouTube videos proving this. But every time I see it in a movie, particularly old ones, old crime movies, English crime movies particularly, are severely guilty of this. It looks weird, and it shows that the armourer on those movies maybe hadn't thought it through and didn't do what they should have done as far as due diligence on how particular weapons work. That cheeses me off irrationally. Number 9, we're almost there. 4K absolutists. I've been on a couple of Reddit groups about Blu-rays because occasionally I want a bit more information. I want to see whether something's out on Blu-ray, whether it's coming out on Blu-ray. I don't delve into Reddit very much, but occasionally I'll dive in there just to see some stuff. And I saw something that really is weird. People were going, well, Lionsgate's got the rights to the Blair Witch Project. There's a chance that it's going to come out on 4K. Goody, I can't wait. Here's the thing. The Blair Witch Project was made on high 8 digital video and 16mm film, both of which are not the best high-definition formats. They're grainy, they're not precise. Movies made on 16mm, blown up to 35mm for projection in a theatre, don't look at all good on 4K. Now, there is a Blair Witch Project Blu-ray coming up, and it's going to look grainy as well because, like I said, those two video formats in which the found footage aspects of the Blair Witch Project were made are going to look grainy on Blu-ray. They're going to have that roughness about them, which is part of the aesthetic of the film. Movies that were made on either of those formats look crappy on 4K. Nobody's ever going to do it because nobody needs to do it. And if somebody is trying to sell you a 4K of the Blair Witch Project, they're scamming you. It's something that's not necessary. A Blu-ray with all of the extras, and they're probably doing it on Blu-ray, but the simple reason is there's an audience who wants it, and also they can put all the extras, contextualizing the film and talking to the filmmakers and working out how this movie was so successful on such a small budget, all that kind of stuff will fit on a Blu-ray. You don't need to do it on a 4K. And there are any number of movies that were made on 16mm, blown up to 35. There's even an Australian one, which by weird coincidence I just happen to have on my desk. Number 96, the movie. The movie version of the really successful cult television series from the 1970s. They made a movie of it, and it hit cinemas here in Australia, and it sold like soft drinks in a desert. It really hit big with an audience here, but it was filmed on 16mm because the production people were cheap. They blew it up to 35mm for cinema release, but even on DVD it looks grainy. So people who want 4K for everything don't understand the definition at which things are filmed. There are going to be things that will look good on 4K. Anything made by a major studio in the past, which was filmed on 35mm or 70mm or any of the other large formats, are going to hit on 4K. If you get an original print or original negative, they're going to look great when they are transferred and tweaked and cleaned up and things like that. But at the moment, not everything can go on 4K. Yes, in the future, with the technologies that we're developing, there is a possibility that there are going to be ways, using the dreaded AI perhaps, of upscaling these low-definition movies to a definition which will look good on 4K. But we're not there yet, and it will probably cost a fair bit of money, at least at the start of the process, to upscale grainier films on lower definition to a format that will look good on 4K. So that's my second last one. 4K absolutists who want everything on 4K, because they've got the Dolby Atmos, they've got the 4K OLED, they've got the 4K player. They want to have everything on 4K so it just blasts their eyeballs with photons. Not going to happen at this stage. And number 10, which is one that a lot of people have a problem with. It's not a problem for me because I've got the technology to obviate the problem. Region coding in movies, particularly Blu-rays and DVDs. Of course, 4K doesn't have region coding, which is one of the reasons why I like it as a format. I can buy a 4K disc from anywhere on this clay and granite planet, and it's going to be able to play on my 4K player. Happy with that. Delighted by that. Want to see more of that. Because of the turf wars between distributors back in the day in various markets, and this dates back to VHS days. There was region coding. There was PAL versus NTSC when it was VHS, and when DVD came along, they divided the world up into 4 regions and went, you can have the rights to make copies of this movie on DVD in this particular part of the world, and you can have that bit, and you can have that bit, and you can have that bit, but movies aren't going to be able to be played on a DVD player. It's only when region-free DVD players came along, and some very crafty little technologists created those, and later on when region-free Blu-ray players came along and crafty little technologists made those, that they found a way around that problem. And we're kind of lucky here in Australia because we're closer to Asia than America or England is. And so region-free Blu-ray players are relatively cheap here. You can get one for like $120 that will play every disc in every region and play it extremely well with no lag. A lot of people just can't do that and can't afford to do that, which is a real shame. So there are my 10. The 10 things that cheese me off right at this very moment in movies and movie-related stuff. Like I said, some of them are big, some of them are small. It's a really weird thing, a couple of them. But for the most of them, they're to do with greed, and they're to do with people who want to find a shortcut to success, fame, and fortune. They're never in the best interest of the audience. And that's part of the problem. The audience is encouraged to want more than they are the movies themselves. Now, I'm not including things where a company does a boutique release, like Imprint or Arrow or Kino Lorber or Vinegar Syndrome, Umbrella Entertainment, or any of those. I'm not including those boutique releases where they put a lot of time and effort, care and love and knowledge into giving us more than just a movie, but giving us a masterclass in the movie as well, and giving us extra information and extra bits. I like those. Those are passion projects as much as anything. Yes, they make money, and yes, they're to be encouraged, and yes, they're an increasing part of the market. But I think for the most part, a lot of the big releases from big companies who, by the way, don't want physical media anymore. They want you to rent things forever. They want you to think it's an acceptable thing for you to rent things forever, and the moment you stop, you have nothing. That's a good thing for big movie companies. Whereas the small companies who are putting out these boutique releases are deeply and wonderfully passionate about physical media and are producing physical media at such an elite level that it warms my heart every time a new release of something really wonderful comes out. But greed and people trying to do things the easy and the most expedient way for them is one of the problems we have in our modern era of cinephile love of cinema, which is a bit redundant, but I'm sorry, it's getting late at night here. So that's it for this time around. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let me know what you think of my 10. Let me know whether there are any things you would add to them. Don't get mean-spirited about people, but is there anything you would add or remove from that list? You can also support the channel by donating to the channel, by becoming a channel member, or by becoming a patron at patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies. And if you do, don't use Apple Pay for the payments because Apple will take 30% of the money. Next up, we've got Science Fiction Saturday, and just this very day, I got the movies I'm going to talk about on Science Fiction Saturday from Kino Lorber, and they're kind of cool, and they're second-tier science fiction movies from the past, but they're kind of cool. So until then, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies, watch some movies that haven't been messed around with by the suits, and I'll catch you next time.